Hey guys, we are starting to make a comeback onto our YouTube channel. We do a lot of shorts, videos. We've been going through a lot as a family. There's been so much to say on how and what our videos are. We're peaceful rage. So there are things that, are wonderful, beautiful, peaceful as in life. And then there will be some things that may be a little bit more controversy, people on the streets, the initiative of mental health, of what's going on, our mental health journey, what our family is going through as a medical family. We are a medical family. We have a older daughter on life support, spinal muscular atrophy type 1. So she basically has floppy tone muscles. And we've had a son who passed away about 14 years ago on Father's Day. Basically being told I was a hypochondriac when I kept bringing him in saying, look, he's coughing, he's sweating, he's clammy, he's pale, he's coughing when he cringes. And I was kept being told that I was paranoid, mother, hypochondriac. I have been certified by, Alberta Health, and I have worked for them and had training through them. And so I was being told that I was a hypochondriac. It turned out my son ended up going back in by ambulance at 80% level, 86% level of oxygen. He went into a cardiac arrest in front of me, and 4 days later was taken off of an ECMO machine, which is a life support, your last resort of life support, actually. He was starting to do good. They were going to take him off because he was responding, doing really well. And on Father's Day at 6 in the morning, I got a phone call as I was doing respite to sleep upstairs with my daughter, and do her care at the hospital and be by my son's side at the same time. And on Father's Day at 6 in the morning, I got a phone call saying that his pupils weren't dilating, and that he wasn't responding anymore. So I had to call his father and ask him to come to the hospital. And on Father's Day, our son was declared brain dead. His name is Caleb. And so when we did the autopsy came back that he died from a viral pneumonia that was attacking his heart, or that attacked his heart. We have been through a numerous amount of things just with our daughter alone. I can say from working in the medical field myself, there is a lot that does not get disclosed, and people get shut down, or their license threatened, or social workers' jobs threatened, or whatnot. A lot that needs to change in what we have in our programs and developments in our taxpayer dollars initially. What is going into our care? What is going into our programs? What kind of help are we receiving truly? What kind of care are your parents going to have, seniors? What kind of care do seniors have? I can tell you one thing. Majority of families do not visit their families unless it's Christmas. And it sucks because I've worked in long-term care facilities and services, and you see that people care about their family when it's Christmas, or when their family member's passing, that some will be there. In general, people are not there to see what's going on or what kind of care your family member truly is getting. When you are there and you do see it and you call it out, you are told you're paranoid. You're told that you need mental health help. You start being attacked at whatever way. Your husband's getting called at work saying that she's crazy and that she's making your child cry. And 14 hours later, we find out that the staff actually fractured your child's femur, and a buckle fracture and 2 split fractures above the knee, but convince your husband you're crazy the whole time. 14 hours. This is the kind of care we receive. Tell our courts that the child has a pneumonia, but we won't tell them that the child has aspirated pneumonia that was caused by negligence of not coughing the child, not giving the child the medical care that is in their development care plan, causing the child almost a near-death situation by filling their lungs with fluid and drowning them, by watching them drown because they didn't know their care. Myself, I have done my daughter's care for 15 years, medical care at home. Before that, I worked long-term care. Her dad is done firefighting, EMS work in Quebec for about 10 years in his hometown area. So he has medical experience from that. We both have medical knowledge, which they find intimidating about us. And so they will take that and say that we're nasty or yelling, especially when we call them out on the medical errors that happen. They won't tell a judge why mom is yelling or nasty. But they will say the child had a pneumonia, but they won't say what kind of pneumonia or what caused that pneumonia or the bodily harm or damages. And I'm telling you guys, we've been through a lot. I had cancer, thyroid cancer. It spread to the left side of my lymph nodes. When they opened me up, that's when they seen the cancer in my lymph nodes and had to remove some of my lymph nodes from the left side. We went through radiation and found through radiation that my right breast swelled up like Dolly Parton. I'm telling you, it just got huge. And flaring and red and painful. And I was told from the radiation that it was attacking the cancer cells in my breast. Since then, I've been kind of negligent on my checkups and stuff, as I'm having similar symptoms on my right side now here. From there, I started doing well. We started getting my health back after all my radiation and stuff like that. And we dodged chemo, thank God. And I'm knocking on wood for that as we speak for the rest of my life. And about a year later, I ended up having what they call a rare brain bleed that people typically die from. And I survived it. My brain bleed, and I can tell you because I get pain right here every day. I feel like somebody has opened a cupboard door and you've hit your head in the cupboard door right there. And that's what I feel every single day when I wake up since this brain bleed. And I deal with my day with pain every day. And so I survived a rare brain bleed on top of it. And amongst everything else in our life, everything that we've been through in our life. We've been through a lot as a family. On top of, we are a blended family, so he has 3 kids from a previous relationship in Quebec of his own, so 3 kids plus a grandbaby. And then we have had 3 children together, 2 daughters and a son, and then plus I have an older son from another previous relationship. So in total, we've had 7 children altogether. But we've lost our son, Caleb. So we have our 2 daughters together. And of course, my oldest daughter, she's 16, type 1 spinal muscular atrophy. She is trach vented since she was about 9 months old. I've done all her medical care at home, right down to learning IV, IVAD access training. So that's a port she has in her chest. And I've learned how to even right down to access that to her feeding, to do trach changes, to feeding tube, or even right down to the nose feeding tube. You know, you name it. I've done quite a bit of it. I've learned quite a bit of her care. I did quite a bit of research, something that they have not done there at the Children's here in Edmonton, because they're not proactive in that. They have told us that they're only proactive in heart and cancer research, and that if we focus on kids like her, that we're going to take away from that research, and basically telling me that my child's life is meaningless. So I ended up becoming proactive. I had to fight the ethics there for her rights, as they're telling every other family, let your baby die. Hold them in your arms, take lots of pictures, and let them die. That's what they would tell you. It costs the hospital $10,000 a day to keep them alive, blah, blah, blah. So on and so forth. Yet the treatments and everything, developments were just around the corner. We were told there's nothing available. 10 years later, there was, finally, after my daughter's 10 years of life. So, or I would say maybe, about 12 years later. So she's about 16. So she's been on treatment for about 4 or 5 years now. And there is a treatment, some of different varieties of them, and ours that we choose to go with is Sperenza. It goes in through the spine, injection about every 4 months, and we do this treatment. It goes in, sends the signals to the brain that, like, hey, we're got to send the protein to the muscles. And it's basically what's happening. We're not getting signals to our muscles, like the proteins, the muscles eating the protein away, basically. And so then the muscles waste away and whatnot. So anyways, as people or children start getting this in an earlier on development, they're able to, have more of an active life of standing, eating, swallowing, playing, having a normal activity life type of ordeal with this treatment. Of course, with our daughter, it was later on, and her muscle developments after 10 years, you can imagine, right? Then if she doesn't develop those muscles, she's learning that as we go through this time and process. So each little muscle that does develop is a huge success for us and for our family. There is a lot to explain. We did lose our home. Hugo and I ended up, if you guys watched the movie on Netflix, Take Care of Maya, you will understand it has a lot, how families, medical families fall apart, how they are played back and forth against each other, and the stress that is put on medical families, the lack of support for medical families, the lack of education for medical families in our situations. It's unbelievable, the inhumane things that we go through. It's not human ethical whatsoever. The treatment, when you fracture some child's leg and you try to blame one parent and play the parents against each other so that it becomes a big fight, and then we say, mom made a mess and blah, blah, blah. And then later on, 14 hours later, we got a development that there's a fracture in this child's leg. When you lose an HIV needle from another baby, and it's between your child and that HIV baby that they lost this needle. 90 days later, you get somebody coming up saying, oh, an RT splashed water in their eyes. Bull crap. I was right there when you guys lost that needle, and I charted it from that date and said, you're going to be up here for that. And I've got my piece of paper from my doctor of my blood work from when I was pregnant. And there is not one STD on that paper. And if there happens to be anything on my daughter, I'm telling you, there's going to be something flying. The doctor was shaking when he saw my paper and said, where did you get this? And my family doctor gave it to me. The stories are unbelievable. Sending up an RT who doesn't know how to use a cough assist and insists to do it on your daughter, and you say, don't touch my daughter. You have no training. You don't know what you're doing. You have no idea how to use that. You go answer a phone call. You come back into the room. Your daughter's because she hasn't suctioned her, but she wouldn't use the machine she doesn't know how to use on your child, and doesn't suction the stuff she coughed up out of your child. So your child was choking. Oxygen is very low, heart rate's very low, doesn't use the call bell to call staff for an emergency code. Her dad has to do the resuscitation. RT standing right there. That's how we started. RT, I says to her, after it was all done, she turns around, and I said, I told you not to touch my daughter. She says, are you blaming me for this now? Well, yeah, because you did not have the education, the knowledge, or ability to use that with my child, or my consent, even. And I said, how would you like it if I took a straw and bit on a straw, clamped it down real tight, shoved it down your throat, and tried to get you to breathe out of that? Because you basically did that to my daughter. So she went and told everybody I threatened her life, and she's terrified for her life, and had people walk her to her vehicle for 2 months. No investigation done. My own son, like I said, a hypochondriac mom. Story after story. There's another mom who stopped me in the hallway in a panic because nobody was listening to her. Something's wrong with her daughter. And she knew I'm an advocate. She grabbed me and she said, come please, take a look at my daughter. Tell me if I'm crazy, something's wrong. Well, yeah, you're right. There's rashes, and yeah, the rashes are developing. We should be paying attention because it could be an allergic reaction. So finally I go and I grab other doctors and I said, look, come look at these symptoms. Finally, people started listening, and I made these doctors listen. And I made these doctors start listening to this mom. Next thing you know, the child's being rushed out the door into PICU. The child had Stevens-Johnson syndrome. Look it up, Stevens-Johnson syndrome. 10% of adults will survive Stevens-Johnson syndrome, and this child's 2 years old, and she survived it. You get treated like a burn victim, and the reason this happened was because they crossed antibiotics. I don't know how many times her dad has caught calculations in PICU of the morphine being wrong. The morphine being wrong dosed. Or you have a nurse who tells you that she's book smart and she knows what she's doing because she's studied and she's done it by the books, and she is completely book smart. So when your daughter starts desatting and having a code, she decides to run out of the room instead of grabbing the alarm bell. And this is a PICU. Grabbing the alarm bell or calling for help at that moment. She leaves your child going into respiratory distress alone, leaving you as parents to figure out what to do at this moment because no emergency staff is by your child at this point in PICU. Her dad hits the 100% oxygen on the pallet. Daughter starts coming up. Things start coming okay. She needed a suction. All of a sudden, eventually, RTs and stuff start coming in. She left her patient, but was book smart. Remember this. When we kept telling her what our child needed at that moment and was ignoring us because she's book smart. We are lacking a big sense of common sense when it comes to patient care. A lot of times I'll say, patient fell, broke their hip, 2 to 4 months later, dies from a pneumonia. Majority of seniors after a fall. Never from the injury, though. Dies from the pneumonia. But so the injury never gets reported properly. My daughter had 2 aspirations, which means she was drowning in her lungs because her care was not being substantial from when they took my children because we lost our home. Yes, there was fighting towards the end when we were losing our home. A lot of arguing, a lot of things. And a lot of things I lacked trust in. A lot of things I felt defeated, depleted, degraded. We felt like we have nowhere to turn to anymore. We tried to turn to services. We tried to turn to help. And we're failed in every corner we turn to. You go to the hospital and you go in as a suicidal patient and you go in with police. They do a 10-4 form and you wait there instead of being admitted to get the support and the programs that we are told that we do have in Alberta. Because I'm going to tell you, it's crap. And I can tell you, I could go and take my phone and go walk downtown and show you what has happened to our programs and our people. And I can tell you, there's a huge binder with our Alberta health programs. I'm trying to find out if I have it at hand here. It's a big, thick binder. I don't know where we put it because we move stuff around so much sometimes that I know I had it around here somewhere. But anyways, it's a big, huge binder, government program binder. And I don't feel, in my opinion, it's ever truly used or utilized the right way. Majority of the social workers I have dealt with, support programs, all that stuff, have told me they don't know how to help me. They don't know what to direct me into. I need a group therapy. I need EDMR. But we don't know how to direct the people into those. Majority of them I went to 2 different hospitals, plus the workers we do deal with now. And I deal with 2 different types I do, because once you get into the whole family thing, there's family groups, and then there's another type of third party, so that we've asked to have involved. So we have all these social workers. Year and a half. I go to the courthouse, sitting there, start talking to another mom. She says, oh, there's group therapy for women. There's a group for women. She tells me, oh. I bring it up to the workers. I think it was almost 4 or 5 months later, finally get in. Over a year and a half wasted. And you float on your own. No worker knows how to direct you, not even put you into EDMR or into the right therapy that you do need, or sit down and say, okay, what should we work on that will work for you? What can we do to bring your family together, to heal together, the therapy? Instead, it's been almost 2 years of diversity. 5 days a week, I go see one child. The other one I get to see every 2 weeks. A lot to do with the scheduling. But in that time, you drift and you lose all that time of your family. I had a social worker cry more to Hugo about her vaccination that killed her sister, damaged her other sister, and damaged her arm, and how she needed his help. And every time they had a meeting, it was about this vaccine and her help and her damsel in distress. And she would write nothing but nasty about me. Nasty, 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 nasty. Never tried to work with my family, but cried damsel in distress to Hugo of her problems and what she needs him to help her with. Because she went on a vacation and they had to take these vaccinations when they were going to Africa. So she treated me like crap that whole time. I never got any help. I never got any support. And nobody ever corrected what was done to our family in that whole year, the abuse of that. Nobody has brought that forward to the court. Nobody has said, this has happened to our family. That kind of abuse, the negligence of a whole year of no help to my family. And the way I was discredited, and the way my mental health was abused, and the way this worker abused her position. And it wasn't dealt with. And she's still a supervisor. They still have her in Shore Park. We've been moved on to Fort Saskatchewan now. We've been moved from the south side to Shore Park to Fort Saskatchewan with our file. Every time we start bringing up massive concerns that are not dealt with, they switch our file, switch our file, switch our file, so somebody else deals with it. And then it starts over. And then they can say, oh, that, they ignore what's been happening. They ignore the abuse. They ignore that my daughter was bruised in the chest right from day one of transportation because they didn't know how to transfer her. Ignored the fact that she ended up needing a chest tube because she aspirated the first time within a few weeks after all of that. And I get told by the pulmonologist, I'm sorry, when do you cough her? I didn't know that you cough her. You are her cough assist. Oh, you cough her by hand because muscular dystrophy donated the cough assist to here at this address of this hospital. And we decided to hold it from you because we were pushing you to let your child die. So we held it on a shelf for 2 years. So we had to get muscular dystrophy to write a letter saying that you were holding my daughter's property, personal property that was donated to her. And that is her personal life-saving equipment for her needs that was donated, and her personal property that must be returned to her. 2 years later, comes back from an RT from a shelf after they kept telling us they don't know where it is. Black dust on top of it, 2 years on a shelf. A cough assist machine that my child needed to help her assist with her cough. Most SMA children do. And I had to learn to manually cough my child by hand, which is why they didn't know what to do with my child when they got her, because I did a lot of things manually by hand because of the negligence from there. Common sense of things like hooking up. I've heard about things of children being hooked up to air instead of oxygen that are asthmatic. 15 hours later ends up having to be shipped out to a bigger hospital. My brain bleed. I was told to stop crying. I was being a baby. Just a hypochondriac is what they said. Go out into the hallway mocking me. God, that she won't stop. She's just a baby. God, she can't tolerate pain. It's just a simple migraine. And I was listening to it all. I go in for a CT. I come back, paramedics waiting, transfer me to the next hospital because they said I had a brain bleed and I have to go in for a surgery. So on the way to the hospital, I'm thinking I'm an idiot. I can't tolerate pain. Am I really having a brain bleed? This can't be real. They said it's just a simple migraine. I'm just a hypochondriac. I'm just being a baby over this. They're going to lock me up. I went through this whole process by myself. The whole way being transferred from one hospital to the next and sitting in the bay contemplating whether I really had a brain bleed or not. This was from the Grey Nuns Hospital. This started in Edmonton, where they love to hand out candy. You sit there and you watch them, and they'll hand out painkillers to everybody. And there's a little area, they sit on chairs, and everybody gets a painkiller. And I said to Hugo one day, I said, look, it's just like a candy store. Everybody gets a pain pop, even if you're, oh, do you have pain? Here. The abuse of our system and the negligence and the common sense and the ignorance and the arrogance because we're overworked and we're short-staffed and we're tired. But not recognizing your own faults or errors. When my daughter's on a canister in her chest and you keep dropping the canister and she has to go downstairs because the tube is not working all of a sudden. Can the canister, when it's dropped, cause an airlock? Good question. Because every time that canister got dropped on the ground, my daughter had to go downstairs, get a new tube. Why was she on a chest tube in the first place? Why was her lungs full in the first place? Let's do it again. Yeah, they did. Let's drown her again. They did it a second time. And I can tell you, the first time that my daughter ever aspirated was when they denied her her BiPAP mask. The CEO of the hospital, actually, denied her her BiPAP. I drove 5 hours from our hometown for this BiPAP fitting mask appointment, where they just focused on my mental health, said I was crazy, didn't even try to do her what they were supposed to have that appointment for. And then they charted in the charts. I got these charts, I purchased them, and said, we don't know why mom is upset. I got sent back 5 hours, another drive home with my daughter, and I knew she has blue lined lips. She was indrawn breathing. She was starting to struggle. She needed this. Drive home that Friday, that Saturday night, I take her to the hospital 20 minutes away. And I said, can you please just observe her overnight? Something is wrong. And the doctor was like, no, he's going to send us home and start getting ready to leave. And nurse comes in with a wheelchair and says, we're going to admit you. He changed his mind. So they admitted me over that night. And I was laying down. The nurse said, I'll take care of her. Go get some rest. You hardly sleep. It was about 11:45 at night. I started putting my shoes on. I just sat up, put my shoes on. Felt like I had to go check on my daughter. And this nurse shows up in the doorway. She says, it's your daughter. And we start running down the hall. We're running. And they're taking, she's struggling. And they take her to x-ray. And she flatlines at x-ray. And she aspirated. And that was the first time my daughter ever aspirated. Because she needed the breathing support. And this children's place that's supposed to be a safe place for medical families. A safe place for your child. A safe place for your family. Was torturing and has tortured my family for almost 17 years. Just recently, a few months ago, January, I believe it was, they broke her femur again. I wasn't allowed to see her because I advocate too much When I speak up on the fact that they transfer her without a portable suction machine, non-portable suction machine, which means you have to find a plug-in if you take a non-portable suction machine, if she has a plug in her trach and you need to clear her access of her airway, you have to find a plug-in in the wall. And I lose access. 2 months of visitation to my child for speaking up on it. And so forth. My child gets a fracture. They treat her. She's got a type of hypoglycemia or what, where, the children can bleed out very quickly if they bruise or anything like that, the bleeding disorder. So she's borderline hypophiliac or something like that. She's borderline of it. They said, oh, she's got a blood clot in her leg. We're going to treat her for a blood clot. I said, are you sure? It sounds like a fracture. Are you sure it's not fractured? Have you guys not looked at her x-ray? She's got thin bones. Have you not looked at it from a thinning bone? Or did you look at it like a normal x-ray? Have you not looked at the notes to see her past history? Oh, we didn't do that. So they're treating her for a blood clot. Remember this, guys. Go back, look at an x-ray, find out the blood's coming from actually a fracture from the bone in the femur. Same femur. Fractured bone, blood coming out, so we're treating her for a blood clot. Do you know how serious this can be? Not to mention, oh yes, also, trach. You can go what they call a cuff. So there's a balloon, so if you got leakage and stuff like that, or you can just do a normal trach without a cuff. We have opted without a cuff because if we go with a cuffed trach, it can cause bigger leaks, bigger hole, and we cannot fix that hole. So they went against our parental consent because she has a positional leak, always has, her whole life. So we've decided her whole life not to do this procedure. Because if we do this procedure, it can create bigger problems by creating a bigger leak, a bigger hole, and then we'll have to keep upsizing the trach. And if you upsize the trach, it has a hook. And as that hook goes in, it can start eventually touching the heart. We run into problems and we have to go bigger and bigger and bigger. You can only go so big. They didn't listen to us. So they also went and did a procedure without our parental consent, malpractice, negligence, due to a positional leak, which is now creating a problem. She's getting leaks. It's a positional leak. It's confirmed. And we cannot reverse this procedure. Cannot reverse this procedure. These are only some of the things that we have been through, just some of the things. So try having your fiance called from work when we need to have we have one income. Saying your wife is crazy. 8:30, 9, about 9 in the morning. Making your child cry. When your wife comes in at 8 in the morning, asks the nurse, why is your child crying? Her heart rate 145. Her saturation's 91, 93. Her face purple, and she's bawling. And when you walk in, your hands are full of grocery bags or bags for your daughter. And the nurse gets up and says, nothing's wrong. You're making her cry. And runs out of the room. And next thing you know, we've got all these charge nurses up in your face, people yelling at you, saying you're upsetting your child. 7 p.m. at nighttime. So this started about 10:30. They called Hugo, got him in from work, missing a day of work, having everybody focus on how crazy I am because I'm upsetting my daughter. Everybody. Finally, 7 p.m., this one nurse comes in. She says, Lisa, you know what? I believe you. She listened to me. I talked to her. She says, I believe you. Go home. I'll call the doctor and we'll have a look. And everybody's arguing and debating what to do with me outside. Mentally lock me up, or should they take me downstairs, call security, what should they do. Hugo and I get in a fight on the way home. Took me 2 hours to walk the rest of the way home. So I do. We fight, get a phone call 10:24 at night. Doctor saying she has a buccal fracture and 2 split fractures above the knee, right in the femur. 14 hours of my daughter being untreated while she was in their care. I have stories upon stories, 16, 17 years of it. I have a social worker who we talked to on that floor, 2 of them for years. One of them ended up having to go on stress leave, saying that her job was going to be threatened if she continued to speak up on our behalf. We went to patient relations. We've written to the Premier. We've written to the Health Prime Minister. Just recently, someone was slashed their wrists. And I'm like, as I go back to my story of going in with the police officers on a 10-4 form, Mental Health Act, and released 4 hours later, I was told that they had nothing for me. So a woman slashed her wrist, they stitched her up and sent her back home the same night. Next day she goes back in. They tell her, we have no programs for you. There's nothing we can do. No more we can do for you. Yet there's a big, thick binder on our programs. We have all these social workers educated, all these people book smart, all these resources, all these phone numbers to call. I even had a police officer tell me that all I do is shove pills in my face all day long. Another one tell me that people like me are cheaper in the ditch. Suicidal person, that's a suicidal survivor. And I deal with a lot from childhood trauma, grief. I don't take grief very well. And I struggle with my internal self as well. You know, I had a sister who I grew up with that called me baby bacon and porky and all these things. Played ball and got my whole teams yelling it just so I would pitch faster. I was one of the fastest pitchers in Alberta when I played softball. And I actually went for Summer Olympics. I was scouted since I was young. I never made it because I didn't put my full potential into my training. But those things stick with you. Yes, I've got an issue with my weight, and I always have, and I struggled with it my whole life. And then I've had that complex, and then I've had, you know, so many other things happen, and had to deal with them and struggle with them myself on top of just a regular life of being a medical mom. And trying to run through a normalcy after going through so much chaos in my own family life as a child growing up. Both my parents had addictions, one alcohol, one gambling, both smoking heavy. And as my mom said, they were given directions, but they were never given the actual help that they needed to support our family through success. And just as I'm saying right now, almost 2 years into this, my family's been nothing but divided. More stress, more tears, more hate, more anger, more frustration, more pain, torment. And you look at it, and I said, you know, and I'm not trying to compare apples from oranges. You know, the ingenuous groups, when our governments would take our families and our children and throw them into schools and Catholic schools and all this stuff. And it makes me think about how abusive our government and controlling it can be. Instead of putting our family together through all of what our people are suffering from. So many people are suffering from addictions. And if we look at it, World War II, our government supplied cigarettes, booze, and women as a stress relief, which became a worldwide problem of addictions today. Cigarettes alone is a huge problem, supported by our governments as a stress relief. And now we are sitting there being told we have all these programs. But I can tell you, as a woman who's been on the street, who's been like tossed, throw her on the street, there is nothing to help you fend for yourself. You literally have to fight tooth and nail for yourself. There is no support. There aren't the programs that they say. There's a bunch of phone calls. You can call one phone call, and then you got 10 other phones to call. Women's shelters takes forever to get into. You're lucky if you can get into a women's shelter. So if the women's shelters are so full, Where's a big percentage of women going then? Human trafficking, streets, back to their partner. And we start the cycles all over again. Because we are not fully saying, look, there is these support programs. We shouldn't be afraid to utilize this. We should be having better support for this. Walk into, places where you need help. And I'm not trying to be rude, but immigration will get majority of help. And we're not in our country. We're suffering in our province, in our city. It's suffering badly. Every corner you sit at, there's a heroin needle right there, or a crack pipe, or people cracked out, or people practically falling into the street because they're in a 90-degree angle falling over. People sitting on the LRT lighting up their pipe right there. We look at the way the programs are set up, and it's quite the navigation. You go into where you should try to get income supports and things like that. They have a bunch of computers. Nobody can help you, but they have all those people hired there. But not one person can help you at those computers to navigate and get through life. Women's shelters full. Shelters unsafe. Then we have people moving into communities, so they start low-income program housings. And then the community's complaining because all of a sudden we've got all these people in this area and it's unsafe. But they don't realize that these people had a home once and have a place they need to start, and the only thing that they knew was the streets. So it's a transition. You don't just move somebody into a place and think, okay, we're going to throw in a flower bed and it's going to be all pretty roses. This is work for everybody in society, everybody. As we start transitioning people into homes, those people have to start remembering what it's like to have a home because they lived on the street for so long. And we have to give them the time of adaptation and the potential to feel like they have hope somewhere, because majority of society just looks at them like they're trash or garbage and walks over them while they sleep on the sidewalk and continues their day like it's normal. I've watched, going into therapy, 2 security guards carry this guy who's in a sitting position in midair from the hospital, walk across the street, throw him on the sidewalk. They threw him hard on the sidewalk. And he just sat there sobbing, helplessly. You can tell he needed mental health help badly and addiction help very badly. And yes, some people don't want help. Some people don't want support. But it's to a point where it literally is pick and choose. Like they come into the hospital and they're narcotics. We're not going to look at their heart. They're just drug addict. They're just a drug addict. They're just a drug addict. Who cares if they got an underlying problem or an infection or anything like that? And you see on the street women in a wheelchair who need medical attention, and 3 men around that woman on the wheelchair pushing her around and nothing she can do. No safety, no protection, nothing. But 3 men abusing that woman in a wheelchair. Nobody stepping in for that woman who needs medical attention, who needs medical care. She's on the street and hopeless at that point. And we are ignoring it. We start wondering why we're coming down to where we are with mental health. Sorry, there's been lots of smoke, fire smokes from Jasper, and even just the little bit that's lingering here has been bothering me. My nose gets stuffy, chest is congested. But I'm just saying that we have been through a lot over the past couple of years. We did lose our home. Hugo and I, we were fighting. There was a lot of stress on us. It became noted as just family violence. I was going through a lot after my brain bleed mentally. It played a big factor on my family. I've had jealousy issues, I guess you would say, but for my own reason, and that I deal with Hugo, um, which has been really hard on our relationship and things that we are working on. Hugo did leave to Quebec in February. He came back in April. I can't say it's always been easy, but we literally are working on everything one step at a time. We've decided to start bringing up the channel back up again. You will see shorts coming up, little things that we are doing to work on ourselves to make a positive change and outlook on our life, redirection. So we're really working on the whole redirection. Throw our positives in, but we're still not going to be quiet on what we do go through, on the things that do need to be changed, on the things that are being ignored in our whole programs of things, and the reality of where our taxpayer dollars are going that we don't speak about. And people do not like to talk about these things because it's controversy and because people will say that I'm difficult. But I'm difficult when it's on something we need to address that is not being addressed. And then we hide it under the carpet, we hide it under the carpet, we hide it under the carpet, and we become this world master of a mess when you take a look at downtown. As a whole, police, nurses, doctors, me, you, are a problem to what's created outside right now. Because we all walk past it. We hear stories. We ignore them. Some will speak up and say things of what is happening, but won't really truly speak out and collaborate and say, look, as a medical mom, this needs to change. I shouldn't feel defeated. I shouldn't feel deemed when I advocate for my child. I should be heard. I should be supported. I should feel like it's a safe place. My child who has no voice has all her trust and faith in all of you and shouldn't have to feel degraded, depleted, or have a chest tube put into her body because you didn't know or care. Bodily damage and harm to a child. Best interests of a child. I can tell you, there's a lot swept under the carpets that's misleading our courts right now for the past 2 years. Why is mom and dad yelling? Why do mom and dad have all these stress? Why is mom so upset? Those are just a few of the small examples of what we've been facing. And later on as we go, I will do like little interviews with dad or other people eventually. As I start becoming more comfortable bringing our channel out in the open. And again, peaceful rage. You're going to see peaceful things. You'll see controversy, things that we will bring up that people are too afraid to bring up, and will say that it's controversy, it's difficult, it's conflict. It's not. It's ignored, and it needs to be addressed. And we need to start having action, and we need to start doing something because it's becoming a mess. Everybody's getting a paycheck. The people with mental health are suffering badly. And it's a fight. I have complex PTSD, MMD depression, I believe it's called, and anxiety. I tell you, when you get hit by a hailstorm, you get hit by a hailstorm. And I'm telling you right now, I've been knocked down, rock bottom, wanted to give up, suicidal. And I've survived. I'm a survivor. Survived a lot. And there are people that I've met that survive a lot. People with high medical needs suffering because we are not providing what our programs say that we provide. Excuse me. We've had a nurse even be paid as an HCA. She got her LPN here in Canada. When she confronted the company why she was still being paid as an HCA, they told her if she didn't like it, she'd be deported back into her country by handcuffs. She cried. She showed up at my house just bawling. Had a big meeting. Never even gave a chair to the owner of the company. Made him stand. Told him that's how he treats his workers. Anyways, they gave this worker a big incentive. Moved her on to Calgary, to the new company that's now in Calgary. Just started as they opened up. Gave her a great position, promotions, everything else. Do you think she said anything about her human rights? No. Under the carpet. Manwire, Delac, and McLennan. My first supervisor, after I brought up a bunch of proposals and things that were not being, it was really a lot of the residents going downhill. Immigration staff being mistreated. A lot of our staff being mistreated. So we were in a private facility. We walked the dock. Eventually, we brought in union. They brought it back out. And Alberta Health came over and eventually took over it. I think about as of 3 years ago or something. Eventually, finally. But if you don't speak out, it's not going to make a change. And we needed to make that change. And it's a long process. That was almost 13 years of a long process from a private facility to see what was happening and how people's care was. And it's like this all over. I highly recommend watch Take Care of Maya, because it's not only a problem in the US, this is a problem here in Canada as well. The exact same conflicts, parents being played against each other in the medical world of families. The stress that's put on medical families, the lack of support. Unless you're heart or cancer, that's what they said. Cancer gets a lot of funding and support, so they will have a lot more. So when I went through cancer, they're like, oh, you've got all this counseling and you've got this and you've got that, and if you can't afford your medication, we'll help you out. And there's a lot of support because of the amount of funding for cancer and as well as heart. When you get into the genetic world, because they're all different types of genetics, it's not recognized. So when you donate to the children's here, a lot of it goes to heart and cancer. So you can go buy a shirt at their shop and the donation, they say, go to the children, but majority of it will go to specific departments. So when you get into the genetic ward, they don't have the upgraded monitors like all the other wards. They don't have all the updated equipment like the other wards. You think that all the children in the hospital are all equally supplied and supported. That's not the case. So if you're making a donation, you have to be specific. I'd like to donate to the genetic ward, and I would like to donate new equipment, this money towards new equipment proceeds. So much as shampoo, they have to run to the other wards to get shampoo or to get just simple things that these other wards, you're like, because I've stayed on the other ward. I've stayed on the heart ward, and everything you need, it was like, wow. And then I go over to the genetic ward, respiratory, and it was like, wow, what do you mean you don't have, they're like, hang on, I gotta run to the other ward and I gotta go get this and I gotta go get this, and the other ward has all these nice new monitors, and you come into this ward and their monitors, like, they're scavenging. It's not fair. Very individualized, and people are not aware of that this is happening. So when you make a donation, you think it's going to all the children, but it's not. Just to make people aware of that unfortunately, it's a big focus, is their main research is heart and cancer. I mean, not unfortunately, fortunately, but it took a lot to be able to be proactive and vocal for our child. Our other children, yes, sorry guys. So anyways, I'm going to start ending it, but as I was talking about, there's a variety of different things going on. and needs for our families, our medical families. A lot of people are not educated on, and a lot of things that people are not truly aware of. And you will not be aware of this unless you start actually paying attention to the details. Start looking at the details, because we're so busy, so productive, and we've developed this like world of blindness to the reality of what is happening in reality, to where is our sorry guys, where is our taxpayers' dollars going? First of all, in all our programs, are our programs beneficial? Do our workers know what programs to direct you to? Do they have the education? That's a good one, because you know what? I've met so many workers who have no idea how to help me. And yet they're textbook smart. We have all of these workers. So many, trust me, there's social worker after worker after worker after worker. But the process for anybody to succeed is unbelievable. When you speak up on what needs to be addressed, concerns, medical negligence, malpractice, you get deemed. 2 years of negligence of your family being neglected. No success. Heartache, pain, tears, trauma. No success for your family. 15 years I've been with my daughters. My oldest daughter, 16 years. 15, sorry. My other daughter, they say from 12 and on is the biggest time for bonding time for mother and daughter. We spent more time listening to a social worker in distress and her hate for me than to put my family together, and not one person stepped forward in the courtroom to say this was not fair for the family. This has been unjust. We have not developed success that we should for this family. We've actually created more problems, and mostly from the social worker, and we didn't do anything about it. They just slide it under the carpet and just let the worker keep going, and the family has to suffer with that loss. A year of loss, and not anyone to step forward to say we're going to correct this. It's continuous. Too much paperwork for people, right? That's what it comes down to. If we were to go and correct these problems, start looking through the medical files of medical foster care, and start seeing the abuse or why children die in medical foster care in reality, the civil litigation that would come from that would be unbelievable. I would be dead set 100% sure if we opened up a lot of those medical files, that we would find tremendous amount of abuse to families and to those children who died probably due to negligence. I had to fight tooth and nail, and I tell you, I have to stick on their ass for my daughter's care. And I tell you, it's pretty sad when you have somebody say, your daughter's very lucky to have such a strong advocate, because all the other children in this facility don't. That's why nobody ever speaks up, because the family's never there. They're not there to see what's happening. They're not there to see what the care is like. They're not there to see what their child needs. So nobody's there to speak up for their child, because we put them in the facility and they're getting their needs met. That's it. Or the parents become exhausted, worn out, tired, depressed, questioning themselves, pushed to rock bottom, pushed to the edge. I can tell you, I've been pushed to the edge. Their dad recently, it's not legal to cross the tracks in Alberta. Their dad recently has been saying, like, look, if nobody's going to tell the truth, I'm going to get arrested, and I'm going to go and speak in front of the judge and tell him reason for my behavior. He's been asking for counseling. He's been asking to get into therapy. Same thing for me. It's been a big fight to get into therapy. Asking and asking and asking for his therapy. So finally, he went and crossed railroad tracks, gave a homeless man who was under arrest water. Crossed the railroad tracks again. Has a warrant out for his arrest because he was driving without his license. Driving my daughter's disability van, actually, because we had no registration on it due to child support. After we lost the house, we couldn't pay for everything, right? So we couldn't get registration because there was a lien on the van for child support. He lost his license due to the child support. My daughter had a roommate who died in her room. She was wide awake, alert, and was going through a distress that whole week. Social work, our support workers wouldn't give us a taxi or transportation from a farm to go to my daughter so that we could be there with her during the times that she was distressed from the situation. So we decided to drive with the van, got stopped. I'm pretty sure we got called because the guy said that we got called in on our front end because the bumper was loose and tied on with a rope anyway, and said that that's why he stopped us is because, and I'm pretty sure I know who phoned us in because of the details that he had. And anyways, so they took the van there on the road, and we couldn't afford to pay for the pound fees, everything. So we lost my daughter's disability van. I worked my ass off for that disability van. We did a bottle fundraiser from Now Radio. We did, big fundraiser for that, and applied through foundations that no longer exist. And it was not easy to get that disability van for my daughter. They are technically supposed to set us up with taxi services to be able to go see my daughter, to be able to have access to my children. They didn't. And that was the only way I could get out to see my daughter. So he had a warrant out for his arrest on top of that because of the tickets. So, which is why he ended up leading to an arrest. During that arrest, one of the officers made an accusation to me saying that I have his wallet, just started accusing me. Right away, flared up my temper. Then I realized it was in his bag. I went to go grab the bag. The officer went and grabbed the bag. Then the canteen fell on the ground. I was like, oh, I need the water. Like, because I was through stress. I have that brain bleed and any kind of blood pressure, stress. Anyways, I needed to calm myself down. Stepped on the water. We had a dispute. And my keys were in the bag, and it was just a stressful moment. But the officer created the situation by making an accusation, which I do have on video. I did post it, and you can see in the video him lip saying, even, look up to me, you have his wallet. And that was it. I have a bit of a temper. I was pissed at that moment. So it's aggravation, in my opinion, that the officer just made that kind of an accusation and just assumption and an attack, direct target like that to me. So it set me off, and me and that officer kind of had it out a little bit, and I ended up with a ticket for obstruction, which I will be fighting due to the fact that it was misconduct. He put his hands on me as well, which you can see on the video. I wasn't doing anything wrong. He asked me to back up, and then another officer spoke. I looked at the other officer, which you can see in the video. I could hear another officer saying something, back up or something, and I was trying to listen to both of them. And when I turned my head and look at the other officer, he starts pushing me back and puts his hands on me, which is misconduct, because he had no lawful reason, truthfully, to actually put his hands on me, which is all on video. This is what I'm talking about, the abuse of authority of what is creating a huge problem that we are not addressing or fixing through mental health, through the crisis of our authorities, the abuse of power. The abuse of power is something, I'm telling you, it's not. Misleading the courts, that is something right now. Not telling the truth or the facts of what's actually happened to my child medically, because they don't even know medically how to explain it, because none of them are medically inclined enough, and they rely on the professionals. So they have no clue what's even happening. And this is what we're dealing with. Anyways, guys, everything is one step at a time. I'm here today surviving. I'm here fighting for everything in my life every day. And I want you all to know you can survive it. We are going to do this one step at a time. Our videos might be boring. They might be great. They might relate to you. You might be able to understand it. You might be like, this is total crap. And one day walk into a hospital and see what we're saying and go, oh my gosh, this is a reality. But we don't open our eyes. We don't listen. We don't pay attention. A lot of people are not medically inclined, so they don't understand what's even happening. And a lot of those medical errors that are happening in there create more work for the doctors from their own staff. And you can see it time and time and time again. And when you bring it up, go to patient relations, the health minister, the premier, nobody wants to listen because it's too much work, paperwork, controversy. Human rights. Initially, what is human rights? Where do we draw a line? Where do we bring the reality to light and say it's not right? When did we start recognizing the wrongs so we can make the rights? Success for families through family violence, success through mental health, success through addictions. 3 of our biggest problems and crises right now that nobody wants to address initially. But I've had officers who are professionally trained tell me I'm cheaper in the ditch. People like me are cheaper in the ditch because the government doesn't want to support us. All I do is shove pills in my face all day long. I'm a cancer survivor patient. So yeah, I do have to take medication every day. Suicidal survivor. Doesn't mean I shove pills in my face all day long. This is how we're training our professionals for mental health crises. About 2 weeks ago, somebody on Anthony Henday, black man, raised his hands, had his hands in the air, got shot and killed. We got to start questioning, are we dealing with mental health crisis enough? Are we qualified and trained enough? Do we have enough training? Do we have enough qualifications? Are we reaching out the right way? Anyways, one step at a time, guys. Thank you for supporting our channel so far. Thank you for all our subscribers. Thank you for taking the time to be patient with us. As like I said, you know, sometimes you might have a good video of a nice moose somewhere in Alberta, or one of the pyramid gardens, or somebody who's suffering with an addiction. Or we might throw on someone who's making an achievement or an album, or, you know, for charity or something. But you never know what we'll have on here. But we're not afraid to speak out on what people feel is controversy. It's not controversy, it's common sense of humanity. Human rights, doctors' oaths to do no harm, to serve and to protect. Like Kamala Harris said, for the people, about the people, to serve our people. One step at a time, guys. Thank you for watching and being with our family so far.